Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before presenting the findings of our mission, I would again like to thank the Kosovo authorities for the invitation to observe and express my gratitude to all our interlocutors who gave myself and my team a very warm welcome during this long election period. I would particularly like to thank Madam Daka and her collaborators at the Central Election Commission for their excellent cooperation with us throughout this period. I would also like to thank the EU Special Representative, Madam Apostolova, and the EU Office, our colleagues in OLEX and the OSCE and civil society for their collaboration. On Sunday, the people of Kosovo went to the polls to exercise their democratic right to vote for mayors and municipal assembly members in their respective municipalities. The process is still ongoing in the counting and results center here in Pristina, where our teams of observers are following the counting of out of Kosovo and conditional ballots. We will continue to follow the process, including the resolution of any complaints and appeals until the final results are announced. The following remarks are therefore our preliminary conclusions on the process so far. The local elections were better organized and more transparent than the 2013 local elections. This was shared by many voters we met on the election day and afterwards. Election day was calm and without major incidents. Overall, the day was assessed positively by our EU observers. The election process differed considerably in Kosovo Albanian majority municipalities in comparison to Kosovo Serb majority areas. Elections were genuinely competitive in Albanian majority municipalities, and the campaign environment was calm, allowing numerous candidates to freely communicate their messages to the voters. The Central Election Committee has made improvements in voter education, training of polling committee members, and simplifying the results forms, and this was important for the quality of the election process. However, the long-standing weaknesses of the Kosovo electoral process were not sufficiently addressed prior to these elections, inter alia those related to the voter register, the system of out of Kosovo voting, enhancing the transparency of campaign financing, effectively enforcing campaign finance requirements, and regulating sponsored programs on TV. These matters will require political will and commitment to conduct the necessary reforms. Our mission assessed that the campaign environment was marred by intimidation within many Kosovo Serb communities, in particular targeting non-Srpska lista political entities and their candidates. This included pressure on individual candidates to withdraw and restricted political competition, raising questions about key principles of the overall democratic process in those areas which did not meet some international and European standards for democratic elections. I would like to say in that regard that we are not here to impose something, but we are here to and implementing. So we are here, I would say, to share, not to impose. And back to the election day. Election day was calm, without major incidents recorded by our observers, who visited 466 polling stations across all 38 municipalities. Polling stations generally opened on time and were prepared for voting. The voting procedures were mostly followed, and the polling was assessed positively in almost all polling stations observed, even though instances of family voting and abusive voter assistance were noted. The performance of the polling staff deteriorated at the counting stage, when 20% of EU election observation mission teams assessed the process negatively, as the vote count procedures were not always followed. Ladies and gentlemen, let me turn to the election administration. Taken as a whole, the election administration bodies on the central and municipal levels conducted the technical preparations in a well-organized and transparent manner. Public confidence in the accuracy of the voter register is still low, and it includes a high number of deceased persons. There is also a systemic risk that data entries of some 500,000 of voters residing abroad may be misused on election day. In addition, voters are not always assigned to the polling station closest to their residence. Based on data of the civil registers, the Central Election Commission registered 1,890,095 voters, an increase of 18,011 since June elections. The process of nominating and certifying candidates for the local elections was inclusive. For the first time, the Central Election Commission has requested the criminal records of all candidates as required by the law, decertifying 87 certified candidates based on their criminal convictions. I would add that overall, the election administration bodies on the central and municipal levels conducted the technical preparations in a well-organized and transparent manner. The CSC sessions have been open, and CSC members work collegially, frequently taking decisions unanimously. However, there were unclear instructions on whether Serbian ID cards should be accepted for the voter identification in regular voting. As far as media is concerned, broadcast media in Kosovo extensively covered the election campaign in a variety of formats. The news coverage of the election campaign was fairly balanced. Major broadcast media positively organized inclusive election debates among mayoral candidates for most of Kosovo Albanian majority municipalities, while they did not succeed to organize them for Kosovo Serb majority municipalities. Our long-term observers were able to attend some of those lively debates. Unclear legal provisions, however, allowed contestants to extensively purchase sponsored coverage. This resulted in some TV channels offering a considerable amount of paid-for programs compared to their editorial coverage, to the detriment of proper voter information. Two major private TV channels, Klan Kosova and TV Tukajini, breached the silence period by covering press conferences of political parties during election day. The Independent Media Commission did not effectively address media violations of the election day, which occurred during the election campaign. Turning now to the complaints and appeals. The Election Complaints and Appeals Panel swiftly adjudicated the large number of complaints and appeals and contributed to a transparent process by publishing all its decisions on its website. Prior to election day, the ICAP received total 352 complaints and appeals related to the current local elections. Most regarded minor violations of the Code of Conduct during campaigning. Ladies and gentlemen, some of the problems I have outlined are long-standing weaknesses which have already been seen in earlier election cycles and have been identified by earlier EU election observation mission and by our mission in June. Following the June legislative election, the Central Election Commission adopted an action plan based on our interim recommendations, which suggested improvements not requiring changes in the legal framework for the administration of the local elections. A set of interim recommendations not requiring changes in the legal framework will be presented following these elections. Other recommendations do require the necessary changes to the legal and long-term perspective. I would like to point out in this regard that there are issues or challenges which does not request national unity or even not a change of legislation. There are some very important technical issues. For example, we mentioned voter register, voter list, and it's with a small technical change, a big change or big impact could be achieved. It is only necessary to change from death certificates that they become automatic and they are not issued only at the request of the family. It's a technical matter, and we would wish that this issue, because this is very important part of the element of election process, is addressed soon, or in fact this is continuous work. As I said, there is no much political will needed for that. And I would like also to say that what is needed to be done is not to be pleased Brussels or somebody else. What has to be done is to improve the quality of the election process, and this means to improve the quality of Kosovo democracy. And by everything it will be done afterwards, this will be good for the citizens of Kosovo, who have right to stand and to choose as free people. And I would like to finish by saying that our assessment as EU observers will not only have meaning if our findings and later recommendations are taken into account in good faith. I look forward to returning to Kosovo 2 to 3 months after the conclusion of the entire process to present the final report of the mission and to engage in a constructive dialogue with all relevant stakeholders on how to move this process forward. And let's say, last word from my side, I'm really pleased that we can report on much better elections than local elections were 4 years ago. Thank you very much. Hvala lepa. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, Mr. Petle. Now we will invite members of the press to ask questions. Please, if you do have any questions, state your name and the media organization you represent. Thank you.
Përshëndetje, jam Valdite Berisha prej portalit Drejtpërdrejt.info. Pyetja ime është cili ka qenë dallimi në organizimin dhe mbarvajtjen e këtyre zgjedhjeve lokale me ato të përgjithshmet apo nacionalet?
I would say that the political fight is different, and some political interests expressed at local level, I would say, are different than in the parliamentary elections, and you don't have coalitions required by law. At the local level, of course, coalitions may appear after the first round. I think that in local elections, also minorities are an aspect or dimension of the process which is more expressed than at parliamentary elections. But comparing June parliamentary elections and these elections, I would say that the spirit the spirit with deficiencies we already mentioned was very similar. I had the chance to visit with my team several minority communities, Egyptians, Croats in Janivo, Gorani in Dragaš, and of course we visited Serbian communities also. So I would say that I didn't see a big difference as far as the atmosphere, as the spirit is concerned, and for me, the spirit I saw here was one of the best I enjoyed in my observation history. Thank you.
Sanja Sovrlić, Radio Televizija Mir. Mene zanima, pitanje se odnosi zapravo pre svega na sever Kosova i na opštine sa većinski srpskim stanovništvom. Dakle, 2013. godine se desio jedan nedemokratski proces na severu Kosova i bilo je takođe i pritisaka i, dakle, jednom rečju nedemokratski proces. Da li ste ili imate bilo kakvo poređenje sa tim procesom 2013. u odnosu na lokalne izbore danas? Da li ste radili neko poređenje i da li su te preporuke vaše preporuke iz 2013. usvojene? Šta je usvojeno i šta se u tom smislu promenilo kada govorimo o severu Kosova?
Hvala lijepa za vaše pitanje. I would say that I share my impressions. I was not there 4 years ago, but people who were there, who attended elections 4 years ago, said this is the difference is obvious and is important and it is promising. You know, I know the situation 4 years ago only from the reports and analysis, and I'm pleased that now Serbian community used the opportunity to stand and to choose the candidates in the legal framework as it is, and also voters who were born in Kosovo and are living somewhere else were able to express their preferences, their political will, and I think that the atmosphere was definitely much better. Of course, we reported some critical about some critical elements, but in general, I think the change we saw is significant, is important, and again, I would say, is promising. Of course, when people have problems to express their will in free environment, then we are always critical. But I do hope that our recommendations, which were so far only partly implemented, will be implemented much more in the years to come. And I mentioned before, action plan endorsed and implemented by Central Election Commission was a very good tool, and we saw that if there is readiness, if there is will, things can move. And I do expect that another action plan will be prepared, and all the elements, critical elements, subject of our reports or recommendations will be addressed in due time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Art Avdil from KTV. How would you rate, if you had a chance, from 1 to 10 these elections? What would be your review from 1 to 10 for these elections?
I studied history.
but I could repeat what I said for the elections in the north in 2013. I myself, I'm coming from a quite young state. We are 26 years old, and Kosovo is even younger. And this means that for some processes, some progress, I would say, time is needed. The development of political or democratic culture is needed. And you know better than me what was at the stake in the past, also in the year 2010. I'm not the only one. There are so many, and not only those high-ranking politicians in Brussels who are pleased by the developments which lead to more inclusive society, to more reconciliation and so on. And we have not been always pleased by the speed, by the dynamics, but I would say things are moving, the process is moving, and we appreciate all endeavors or all steps forward in that regard. So I would wish that people more remember 2017 elections than 2010.
Aleksandra Zdravković, Kim radio. Rekli ste da je u srpskim sredinama bilo prijetnji i zastrašivanja u kampanji. Ono što je primetno bilo na dan izbora jeste da su ljudi dovođeni u grupama da glasuju, i to zajedno sa kandidatima. I ne pričam samo o Srbima, nego su i Romi dovođeni zajedno sa svojim predstavnicima da glasaju kolektivno. Pa da li to ima veze sa demokratijom i sa slobodnim izborima?
Ja mislim da nije nužno da ako ljudi dođe grupno, u grupama, da bi to značilo da se na nekoga, da se izvaja pritisak. Excuse me, excuse me, ja sam mislio da ima prevod. Pardon. So, I think that the fact that people come together could be considered also as an expression of a culture. I was observer in several other countries, and people are accustomed to come to the polling stations as families with all children, even the smallest one, and we cannot estimate this as underaged voting. And I think that in some societies, a collective approach is a kind of the culture a community has. So I cannot judge. I don't see automatic conclusion that if they came in the group that there was a certain pressure to one or many of them. They also could have, I would say, common will, let's say so. But I wouldn't see, of course our observers were attentive to that, but I wouldn't see problem in that per se, I would say, on its own.
Are there any more questions? Yes. So if there are no more questions, I'll thank you for attending this press conference. There is also time for interviews with the CEO after this press conference. And if you go outside, there's coffee, and also please pick up copies of the preliminary statement and the press release in the language that you would like to pick it up in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.